What's up, everybody, and welcome to Empower and Design show number 2 on YouTube, where we talk all things design and business with a focus on leadership. Today, we'll be talking with my good friend Dallas Bentley from Marietta, Drapery, and Window Coverings, where we'll talk about how he got into the design industry and what is his leadership style like. Hey, Dallas, thank you for joining me today. Before we get started, let's let the audience know a little bit about you.
Sure. My name's Dallas Bentley. I'm one of the owners of Marietta Drapery and Window Coverings Company. I was born and raised in Metro Atlanta, and married. Have one daughter, and I actively volunteer with the Big Brothers Big Sisters Association of Metro Atlanta. In my day job, as I said, I work for Marietta Drapery, and I do business development for our hospitality division.
Okay, well, great. So what sparked the passion to get into, I guess, the design industry and working at Marietta Drapery and Window Coverings?
Yeah, I took a little bit of a different route. I went in through kind of the vendor side. So Marietta Drapery and Window Coverings, we manufacture window treatments. So draperies, shades, and blinds. And we have a couple divisions, and one of them is focused on the hospitality or hotel industry. And in the course of doing that, in the course of making our products and working with project managers and design, I ran into a lot of designers. And so it was a little bit of a learning curve for me to figure out what mattered to the design community most. And so I've kind of learned from the ground up, picking up books about design and talking with interior designers and coming at it laterally instead of it coming up from something that I studied in school or anything like that. So I've sort of fallen into it.
Can you please tell everyone about, Marietta Drapery, about the company and how it's unique versus any other window treatment company?
Yeah, Marietta Drapery we're a direct manufacturer of window coverings. We have a workroom and warehousing in Marietta, Georgia, that's over 100,000 square feet. And we operate in 3 different industries, commercial, multifamily housing, and hospitality. Our main products are shades, blinds, and draperies. So we have people sewing, we have people assembling blinds, we have people assembling or cutting down shades, and we offer installation services as well. And that's one thing that is unique, or that it's hard to do, is to work in the installation realm where you're installing window coverings on construction sites, especially in the high volumes that we do it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've got a national footprint across the United States, but we started as a family business in 1946, and we still are family run. We've got sales reps pretty much all across the country. We don't aspire to take over the world and be world dominators, and as a result, we don't get too big for our britches, as we say down here in Georgia. We try to stick to the fundamentals as much as we can, and just make window coverings the best we can and install them the best that we can. And so we don't get over our skis trying new things or getting over leveraged, investing in too much. And so we try to focus on our core business, and that's our thing, is we try to focus on our core business and get better at that every single day. What seems to change around us is how fast anybody needs it, and how what the price everybody needs it. And so that's where we do a lot of our adapting, is how can we make it quicker? How can we make it cheaper? But we're not trying to work our way out into several different markets where we might take our eye off the ball.
Yeah, definitely knowing your niche, especially in this industry now is key because, everybody wants it yesterday, but if you know your niche and your price point and what makes you unique, people come, to you versus any other, where they can just go to Walmart or Amazon or whatnot to get it cheaper.
Certainly, and people will come to me quite a lot, and they'll say, "Hey, I need a specific project. I have a unique situation," and I might say, "You know what? We're better suited for something where you're doing something at volume in this particular area where you need a good price point for that product and you need it installed at a certain schedule." Whereas if they want something that's super special, that's going to go up in a celebrity's house that needs a lot of attention to detail on the installation, that might not be something that's appropriate for us.
Yeah.
And I have other vendor partners that I've worked with that I set up a direct relationship with them so they get the help they need. And so we try to position ourselves as being window treatment experts. That doesn't mean that we do everything, but
Yeah.
that means that we kind of figure out what we do well and focus on that.
And giving other business to other to other your competition, depending on your competition, also helps out you in the long run because they'll be for something that they're not unique at, they'll send it to you. So I mean, it's
Yeah,
a
that's a unique thing. Your competition is not your enemy.
no.
And to have a healthy industry, you need to have a good relationship with those people, and it can be mutually beneficial. It's not a zero sum situation where you have to lose and they win, or vice
Yeah.
versa. This is an unusual time, and we will get on the phone with our competitor friends out there and might find out about something that we didn't know about that can help us all. Um, I think that this is kind of an adversarial world right now, especially with social media, where you want to
Oh
get
yeah.
one up on one another and you want to kind of clap back on people. But the real world is it takes relationships develop, and they have good periods and they have better periods, and then they have worse
Yeah.
periods. And so you kind of have to ride that out and be as genuine as you can.
So what does the culture at Marietta Drapery look like, and how is your leadership style unique?
Married to Drapery's culture, we're a family business, and this is our 75th year. So we have pretty deep roots in the local community. Everybody who works there seems to know everybody. Many of us are related, so you'll find a lot of people with the same last name. We all work together and understand each other, but that's not the whole story. We also have a lot of people who are first generation Americans that are in that mix. So we have people from Mexico, Vietnam, and China, and their experience is unique. And so it's sort of like the people from around
Yeah.
nearby, and then the people who are from overseas. I think my approach to leadership and to our culture there is unique because it kind of involves both worlds. I grew up in the company. As a boy, I would go and get candy from some of the people that were sewing on the sewing machines. Um, I would mop up and sweep up in the summers. And I had my first office job there after college. So a lot of the people that have been there have been sort of like family. I've known them since I was a boy. I said, but also I moved to Montreal in my 20s, and I learned French. I took French classes.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of the people that were in my French classes were from many of the same countries that work at the company now. And so I had a little bit of an experience, not as much as them, but a little bit of an experience of being in a place where English wasn't the first language. And in the
Yeah.
course of that, I realized it's hard. And I started to understand a little bit of the isolation that people feel when they're in another country working, especially in a working thing where there's a lot of power dynamics going on. And it's always good for someone to be a bridge to be a bridge for that immigrant person and the people in your community and your country. And so in my leadership style, I often think about the term bridge. I think of myself as being a bridge to the people that are not necessarily from here, comfortable being here 100%, and the people who sort of maybe take it for granted. So I
Yeah.
try to make sure that it's a little bit more inclusive.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, definitely. I mean, I kind of see myself somewhat as a bridge too. Even though I'm working in multiple aspects, one being retail and that bridge between management and higher management to um, my lower cashiers and baggers and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely, and communication, as you know, is key to any kind of leadership. Um, Trying to think where I was going to go with that. Um,
Yeah, well, I think implicit in some of that leadership style and some of the point you made about communication is listening.
yeah,
And sometimes when you have people who don't natively speak English, you have to listen twice as hard. You have to think about what they're trying to say versus what's coming out. And especially with the pandemic and people's concerns about missing work, um, and navigating around being ill at work, or are you ill, or my child is sick, and there's a lot of competing interests right now. And when you have people that don't speak the language natively, it can be a big challenge, and it requires a great deal of patience,
yeah,
um, and
compassion.
compassion. Yeah, 100%. You got to make people feel comfortable that you at least have at minimum their best interests at heart.
Yeah, and I can't
And
remember. Or go ahead.
you can't force that. It just,
No, no.
you know,
Leadership, I mean, is definitely basically based on trust, and trust is earned, not given. So, what fuels your leadership style and why?
um, I think what fuels me is mentorship, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that you can't do it all yourself.
This is
Um,
true.
so how I get you ask yourself at a certain point, you go, how can you get the help that you need to succeed?
Yeah.
And it's 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 easy to do it in a top-down authoritarian way if you're in a position where you are in a management position, but you might not get good, honest feedback if that's
No.
the case. And so what I think is the hard thing and is the right thing is to create one-to-one connections with people that account for their individual circumstances, evaluating where they might flourish and where they might not. Not every person has a skill set or the motivation to go in a particular direction with their career. And so understanding kind of which paths are the best for people will build that sort of trust, like you mentioned. And eventually that mentorship role will change and they will become self-sufficient. And
Yeah.
then you will become their peer in a way. But there is a trajectory, to people's careers, or even just their place even if they're an established person with a new company. There's a trajectory to them getting comfortable and feeling like they can make a meaningful difference. And your leadership style has to adapt to that person and where they are. And
Oh,
so mentorship is the way that I try to do that. And I'm always learning new things because everybody's a little bit different.
oh yeah, yeah, me too. I mean, in my setting, working at Publix, current or temporarily, or currently as my one of my other jobs besides design, um, definitely trying to understand where people's strengths and weaknesses are and what position is right for them. I've had a couple people that have transferred to other departments because they um, were better suited for like grocery or deli department or another department, because being in customer service, you have to be more people focused to an even higher extent than any of the other departments. And we've had a couple people transfer that way. But like you said, understanding where those people strengths and weaknesses are, can you mentor them, how can you inspire them to be the best person or version of themselves that they can be.
Right. And I think that having that, being able to tailor, or place people in the right spot is critical. But also, people are always learning new things about themselves, and
Yes.
some people don't know that something is more better suited to them until they get out there and they work for a while, right? And
Yep.
so you dabble a little bit, and then at a certain point you come back and you say, okay, let's take an honest look at what I enjoy or what I'm good at or what I'm not good at, and figure out how much of that stuff you actually want to work at changing and getting better at it, and how much do you want to shift on focusing less of what you don't do well and more of what you do well. And I think that's always a balance.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and you've got to think a little bit about the organization and what their needs are, And hopefully those two can match up as often as possible, where you can be doing what you do best, and that also is what the company needs. I
Yeah.
think that's the thing I struggle with the most, is that even in my job, there's a lot of things that I have to do that I don't do very, very well. And but there's no one else to do it, or it's more appropriate for me to do it. And so I think there's a certain deal of acceptance that you have to make with that. That there's going to be still some things that you're not gonna love, or you're not going to be that great at. And so how do you make the most of those at the same time?
So, what is one habit, mindset, or trait that you're currently working on to evolve, your leadership style, I guess?
Um, I have certain traits and mindsets that I'm working on in my own personal productivity to try to be a productive person. But in terms of working with others and being a leader, um, I think that I think one of the biggest things that I've learned recently is the idea of forgiveness.
Yeah.
Um, you go through some tough periods, and I do my best to be prepared and to be ready for just about anything. But there are situations where you get into conflict with the people that you work with, and sometimes those people can be people that you're very close with personally.
Hmm.
And I've had a few moments with some of the people that are in management at my company, where I've got in conflict with people that I never expected to be in conflict with. And it can be tough, and it can turn personal. And but the point is that I think the hard thing is you have to have the ability to kind of forgive yourself for messing up, and you have to have the ability to forgive the other person as well.
Yeah.
You can't do one without the other. Um, and I think being able to have an open dialogue, an honest dialogue, where you're having difficult conversations with people, where you're willing to admit that, hey, you might have screwed up, you
Yeah.
know, and it might have gotten personal,
Yeah.
and it didn't get that way because you personally have you want to attack people, or you're malicious. But sometimes the temperature is raised because of what's happening in the market, what's happening to you in your personal life that bleeds into your business life. So the idea of forgiveness has been something that's been front of my mind, not just for others in the way that they may have treated me, or way that I think that they might have treated me, but also in
Yeah.
myself. Right now, nothing's perfect in this economy.
Nope.
And if you have that expectation that you're going to wake up every day and be as good as you were yesterday, sometimes you're going to get disappointed. And the question is, what are you going to do with that disappointment? And if you can kind of forgive yourself and forgive others, then I think that you can go ahead and you can make progress, even if you're dipping sometimes and going up other times in terms of the progress that you're making. Forgiveness is what allows you to kind of pull back up from that dip, and that's what I've been focusing on.
Yeah, and I mean, me personally, like within my design, trying to understand where the other person is coming from, and I think you do a really good job with that as well. As far as your leadership, and then also, we've been on the board of NEWH in the past, but yeah, understanding someone else's point of view, pretty much, I think you've done a really good job, and that's one of my strengths as well, to try to mitigate and come to a resolution when there is conflict, I guess.
Right. I mean, I don't, not a lot of people go out there thinking they're wrong,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, that's not the way anybody wants to go through life. But
No.
a lot of people don't go out there thinking that they're wrong, and when they go into a situation where there's high stakes, and it can cost jobs, and it can cost you your ego a little bit, um, that's where the rubber meets the road about how you treat people. And what I've learned, and this has been especially hard for me, is that um, you can stand up and have an opinion without being um, without necessarily being in a fight with somebody.
It's
And so
so
there's
true.
there's a gray area there. um, and I think that for me, I don't like conflict, and I was raised by somebody who really kind of thrived on it. Maybe that's why I don't like it. um,
Yeah, I kind of feel
yeah,
the same
and
way.
you're a product kind of the way you grew up. It influences the way that you respond to situations, but not
Yeah.
the way that you might evolve.
Yeah.
And so I've learned that about myself, and I realized that I can have tough conversations where I don't like the outcome, um, and I might end up end up on the losing end of that. But what the truth is that if you get closer to the truth by the end of the conversation, then
Yeah.
you actually have achieved something. And so it might be hard at the time, but it's the right thing.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it's just I mean, not making it. I guess, like you said, it goes back to respecting other people, although you have a different opinion, basically, or different view, or different, what you're trying to achieve. Like you said.
Yeah, there's a mixture. There's a dialectic. There's a phrase called a dialectic, where two things that seem like they're in opposition of each other exist at the same time, and that's where you can accept something, but also want to change something at the same time. So you might say that I accept the fact that I don't always eat good. I don't always eat well. I eat chocolate too much or whatever. But you still want to try to eat less chocolate at the same time. So you can do both.
Yeah.
And I think you have to have both sides of those things in your dealings with other people, that you can accept that, maybe I don't know everything, but also I know that something needs to change in this situation. And so those things are not mutually exclusive. And I think that sort of mindset that takes things out of black or white and sees the gray can really help your relationships with others.
Oh yeah, definitely. And like one of our good friends, Trudy, always says, it's not so much your weaknesses, it's more of your gaps. And how do you shorten those gaps by having other people help you and you help other people with their gaps,
Right. And a lot of that, identifying those gaps is really, really hard.
Yes,
because
definitely.
It requires a brutal amount of honesty, and it can put you down kind of low if you actually face that stuff, and it can set you back, and you don't get back up on the horse. But you have to be able to accept that, and so that's the accepting part of it. And then if you want to change from there, you got to accept it first.
Right? Oh yeah, definitely. Knowing, accepting it, and knowing where your limitations are, and without letting yourself, go into depression, but also understand where other people are, and then just basically accepting is the first step of evolving, and
Yeah, and sometimes it's a hard thing to do, but it's a simple process. And sometimes it might be, you know what, maybe I screwed up.
Yeah. And we all are like, well, it's not, I don't want to do that because it's uncomfortable. It's just,
it's perceived as a weakness.
It's perceived as a weakness. And this is, we'll say in society in general, nobody wants to show weakness. School doesn't teach us that, they just teach us to do A plus B equals C. There's no, gray area. And then in the business and leadership side, it's like the total opposite. It's like you need to show weakness and show your team and whatnot that you make mistakes and forgive yourself, but forgive them, and then so that you build that trust together.
Right. And if you never demonstrate that you are aware that you can make mistakes, how is anybody ever going to point out any deficiencies in your thinking and the direction you're taking the company? They're going to be reluctant to do it because the feedback they're going to get is, this guy never says he's wrong. This guy never says he's sorry, so I'm not going to tell him. Do you tell him? No.
And then the things just keep getting bigger and bigger until you start having bigger problems. Then people start quitting because they're like, well, I don't want to work for somebody like this. So in the long run it hurts you. In the short run you might get a little gain, but in the long run it definitely hurts you.
Right. On the flip side, owning up to stuff, it hurts you in the short run. So people naturally want to avoid that if they can, because we're animals, man. We're taught to avoid pain.
Yeah. So Dallas, it's been great talking to you. We've talked about Marietta Drapery. We've talked about your different, leadership style. We've also talked a little bit of life and people in general. But before we go, I have one more question for you. What advice do you have for aspiring leaders?
Well, I remember thinking, hearing advice about leadership when I was just starting my career, and because people would come to my classes, and they would ask, what advice would you give people? And I don't remember any of their responses. I just remember thinking in my mind, I was like, I felt like either you had the ability to lead or you didn't. I felt like it was something that was intrinsic inside you. And I don't believe that anymore.
No,
Um,
definitely. It's a learned skill. Some people are naturally given that skill. It's one of their natural, qualities. But other people, like myself, definitely, it's been a learning process for years.
and there's different parts of leadership. There's coaching, there's management, there's some that are more about inspiration and motivation, and some about helping somebody along in a more incremental basis. Um, Let me go back on that. There's different types of leadership that are some are more coaching based, that are more about motivation and encouragement, and some of them are a little bit more management style. Um, so there are different bits of leadership. I think that we have a conception of leadership that sometimes can be a little bit one dimensional.
Yeah.
Um, but as I said, I think it can be developed, and I think that leadership, in like a lot of things, is just it's a collection of skills. Um, you learn how to ask attentive questions, right?
Yes.
You learn how to um, make decisions when you don't feel like you have enough information.
Yeah.
You know, in an uncertain world, decision making is part of it. You have to think about what the alternative choice would be, and you have to work out that scenario in your head and say, what are the consequences? So you have to sort of analyze what a choice. And sometimes you just have to admit that you don't know everything, and you got to take a risk. And so there's a lot of different bits and skills that go into leadership. Um, I would say that in the end, it's about practicing your courage to make these choices,
Oh yeah, definitely.
and be willing to learn from your mistakes and go forward. Um, if you look up the model of a leader or a biography of a leader, and nowhere in there does it say this person was perfect. When
Yeah.
people say that, that's sort of a cliche now. You say, well, I'm not perfect. I made a lot of mistakes. They don't write books about the mistakes very much.
No.
They mention it. They mention it because it makes it a better story, but they don't dwell on the mistakes. And you know what? Those people were miserable when they were making their mistakes.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I have this quote, you can't really see on my my screen, but it's from John Quincy Adams. If your actions inspire others to learn more, do more, and um, learn more, do more, become more, then you're a leader. And that's definitely one I try to live by, but it's also very hard too. um,
Yeah, I think that, and I've become a parent recently, and that's sort of a form of forced leadership.
yeah,
You take
definitely
it,
is.
you get tossed in there, and really you have to accept the fact there's a lessons to be learned there, but you have to accept the fact that you teach your kid how to walk, and then they're going to walk on their own after that, and they're going
Yep.
to fall down.
Yeah,
And
and
you
yeah,
really should you should look at that with yourself and go, you're going to fall down a few times.
yeah, yeah. But you'll get back up. You mean that's the thing as a parent. You're there to guide them, not control them. Guide them so that eventually they can make their own decisions, and you taught them well enough to, be the best person that they can, and that they can make critical, choices and decisions on their own as they get older.
Right. And I think one thing that I never understood is that, in a way, getting up and the whole dust yourself off, get back on that horse. Nobody ever teaches you how to do that. They just
No.
tell you to do that, and
Yeah.
so you ultimately have to learn what that means for you. Um, but just like anything, it's a skill.
Oh
Learning
yeah.
to say you're sorry is a skill. If you've never done it before, you're really bad at it.
Yeah. And well, I
Um,
mean, I'll admit that's one that I struggle with even in my current role, because growing up, my family or parent, whatnot, never really did that. It was more of go on, dust yourself off, move on kind of a thing. It wasn't so much I made a mistake. So as an adult, that's one of the things I've been trying to learn and and work on.
well, I think that there's a there's a gap there. There's we are taught to dust ourselves off, rub some dirt on it, and get back out there, which is ultimately what you need to do in the
Yeah.
end. From a that's the plot. Like these
Yeah.
are the actions that need to take place, but you're not taught how to manage those feelings
Yeah.
and in a way that makes it so the next time this happens, you tell yourself that,
Yeah.
and it resonates with you instead of having somebody else constantly in your voice
Exactly.
in your head.
Exactly.
And so it's sort of clumsy.
Yeah.
It's the right way, it's the right thing, but it's clumsily done. And so I don't think everybody responds that way. And I
Mhm.
think that lack of attentiveness, and not everybody responds that way. And I think that lack of attentiveness to how people are motivated is something that we need to work on as a society.
Thank you for watching Empowering Design. If you enjoyed today's content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video.